Hey everybody, Jason Burmis here, and you are watching 24 videos in 24 hours in light of the fact that YouTube is now changing their terms of service to be able to just get rid of any channel that they deem non-commercially viable. In light of that, I thought to myself, well, why don't we do some videos in the run-up to that from midnight Sunday all the way up to when we could start seeing a mass deletion of videos. And since I'm not very commercially viable, I still think my free speech is important. And that brings us to our next guest. He is the founder of the website, Founder of the Day, and he is quite the historian, a good friend of mine. Jay Mandresh is with us to talk about the Founding Fathers, his website, and why freedom of speech is so important and what their views, and many of them they had, were. Jay?
Hi, Jason. Thank you for having me.
You got it. So, first of all, tell people how they can find you, why you started Founders of the Day, what your background is.
Well, you can find me at founderoftheday.com, where I write daily articles on the American Revolution, usually more obscure stories and founders, the ones who don't get as much attention as they might deserve. And you can find me on YouTube at Founder of the Day, where I publish videos just 5 days a week. I can't quite keep up with Jay Burmis. My background is I've been researching the American Revolution for 20 plus years, and eventually I created this site to share the wealth, so to speak.
And you know me, I'm not a revolutionary, as some people have me tagged. You've known me for quite some time. I'm a reformationist. I'm a big constitutionalist, a Bill of Rights guy. I think that the founders got it right in the sense that they built a system for when they did have to change things. When they decided, hey, you know what? Maybe a black person isn't 3/5 of a human being. And hey, you know what? Maybe women should have the right to vote. They built that into the system so not only could people talk about it, but then lobby for it and actually get it done, passed into constitutional law. We're a far cry away from that today, in my opinion, Jay. And what was it that made the founders say, you know what, it's time for a change. We need to really look at where we are and maybe fight the British?
Maybe fight the British. Well, truth be told, the problem with that question is, what would the founders say at large? And we're talking about hundreds, if not thousands, of separate people, which makes it very difficult to say, hey, you know, they all thought this and they all thought that, which is something you hear pretty frequently. No offense to you, bud. You're not the first person nor the last to say it. But which makes it difficult. But at large, it also depends on where you might have lived. You know, in the North, in Boston, it was merchants who were unhappy about the taxes. But in the South, you know, it was a lot of people who had fought in the previous war who wanted to move further west overland. And King said, no, you got to stay here. So for George Washington and many of the Virginians and South Carolinians, it was more about, hey, let's move west. You know, we just fought this war. We want to move into what was then the Ohio Territory and the Northwest Territory. But I did want to track back to what you had said about women, and you hear a lot today about people saying things like, how could they say these things when they own slaves and things like that? And they suppress women in a fashion. But what's really interesting about the American Revolution is, you know, Thomas Jefferson and the rest of the founders, when they wrote All Men Are Created Equal, they were talking about, hey, you know, this might not be the way it is now, but we need to start making changes now to better for the future. And that's why, you know, years later, when they wrote the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and the first couple of amendments there, the idea was we need to let things happen as they can. We need to open the doors for change to be available. And that's one of the important things about freedom of speech. And that's one of the things the founders really believed was, like, you know, we might not be right yet. It's like, you know, as Jefferson's writing All Men Are Created Equal and he owns slaves, this is just a few years after he had fought freedom suits in court to free slaves. It was about making the change. It was about, this is just because this is the society we're in now doesn't mean it's the society we want forever. So we need to start making incremental changes here even though we might not get everything done right now, nor would all of the founders have wanted all of the liberties that everyone has nowadays. It was a different time, which is a
No, they wouldn't have. And that's the
yeah.
point. Listen, incremental changes through the bounds of our Constitution and Bill of Rights is really what this constitutional republic was founded on. States' rights, but free speech was always, hey, even if I think what you're saying is deplorable, I will defend your right to say it. Unfortunately, we don't really have a constitutional republic anymore. We have a runaway national security state. The judicial, executive, and legislative branches are not of equal power. And in large part, the vision that the founders, or at least many of the founders, had is utterly gone. But what still remains is the idea that I have free speech. And you may be disgusted with what I say, but I can still say it. And to me, Jay, I think that's probably the most important one of our rights in this country, to be able to express ourselves freely and speak out against power. What are some of the views of some of the more popular, I guess, founding fathers that you think are interesting on this matter?
Well, tough to say. I do want to note real quick that over at Founder of the Day, I don't talk about modern politics as much as we're talking about here. I try and stay as objective as possible. But when it comes to freedom of speech in general, or specifically, when they wrote it, one of the problem was it was written to protect the rights of the states more than anything else. So, for example, the First Amendment also has freedom of religion. Well, I'm going to digress for a second here. First Amendment has freedom of religion, but at the time, certain states like Connecticut had a Church of Connecticut. They still had a state church, but they put it in the federal government could not make a federal church because each different state might want their own state church, which sounds crazy today. But I bring it up because that's one of the hearts of why we have the First Amendment in general, and all the different parts of it is the federal government really is not supposed to make any laws regarding church, state, freedom of speech, preventing people from protesting. That's not to say that individual states can't. I know that's not a popular opinion, but I bring it up because...
No, because we have hate speech laws now in certain areas, including New York, where if you say certain words and you have a certain viewpoint, that is now illegal. It's already taken over Europe. It's a very slippery slope. Again, you may say the most abhorrent, repugnant, repulsive, terrible thing in the world. I don't think you go to jail for that.
I agree. You shouldn't. Although, I guess that depends who you're talking to and what you're saying, Burmis, and that's probably why they're taking people off YouTube. I know, exactly. So, but then the question is, the other question becomes, is YouTube, does the federal government have control over YouTube and what it does? Which is a different modern question that the founders probably never thought to ask themselves. You know, like we generally have a lot of, we'll say more conservative viewpoints would say, you know, let the businesses run themselves, and it is an independent business.
But let me stop you here, because you know what, we want to talk about it being an independent business, and it's, you know, an LLC, and it's a division of Google, which is a division of Alphabet. But when you get down to the nitty gritty, these large corporations that own them are subsidized by what? The federal government and their corporate welfare plans, and they don't pay taxes. And they are part of policy. For instance, Google itself is in bed with NASA, not just in their space program, but in their quantum computing arena, and has been for almost a decade. And guess who's pumping money into that? Well, it's good old Goldman Sachs and Jeff Bezos, who has SpaceX. So really what we're talking about now is the Leviathan of fascism amalgamating into the technopoly I talk about, Jay. And we've had this conversation. It's a little deep. It's a little bit beyond the founding fathers. But to me, you can't make that argument in the sense, you know, you want to make that argument, but then you see how much the algorithm is what? When this video is over, does it go to another Jason Burmis video? Will it go to Founder of the Day? Fuck no. It will go to Fox News, man. And I am not Fox News. I don't promote Fox News. It's a real problem. So YouTube, look, I got nothing but love in my heart for you. I'm not sitting here promoting hate speech. I'm not promoting violence. I'm certainly not a conservative or a liberal. All I want for Christmas is my free damn speech, and you should too. So Jay Mandresh, as we wrap this up, what do you think? I know you like Jefferson. You're a big Jefferson guy. What do you think that Jefferson's opinion, based on his writings and his political moves, would think about the type of censorship we're seeing outwardly on large platforms, not just this one, but things like Twitter, etc.?
Okay, well, that's a very difficult question to answer. I assure you, Jefferson never considered being in this scenario. But Jefferson's biggest concern, he wanted free newspapers. That was the media of the day. That's what they had. I'm going to paraphrase a quote because I'm not great at memorizing whole quotes, but he very famously said something along the lines of, I'd rather have free newspapers and no government than free government and no newspapers. That's the paraphrase. It wasn't exactly.
I get it. He saw the importance of the Fourth Estate, no matter where it lied.
Right, exactly. And it was all about people being able to report what was important. Again, he's the one who, when Adams took over for Washington as president, there was the quasi-war with France, and Adams had passed the Alien and Sedition Acts, which was the first time we were really limiting free speech in this country. And Jefferson, along with James Madison, wrote both one of them wrote the Virginia Resolves, one of them wrote the Kentucky Resolves. They kept their names very quiet because it was treason. And one of them was yeah.
Oh wait, treason? You mean like hearsay on a quid pro quo Ukrainian deal that was already a Ukrainian corruption deal? No, not that kind of treason. Real treason.
No, but like as in Jefferson was vice president and the president passed these laws, and like them or not, that was the law. Mm-hmm. And he wrote about what garbage it was and how we needed to be able to free to speak to each other. And that was more important because it kept the government honest. Is the real thing. It wasn't honest. Even so much from my understanding, it wasn't even so much Jefferson's his desire for individual liberties. It was the desire to keep the government honest.
Well, Jay, I love what you had to say. I love the website, founderoftheday.com. Go there right now. Make sure you follow him at Founder of the Day on Twitter, and you make sure he's got 61 subscribers. Can we get him 600? Can we do that, Burmis Brigade? Can we thumbs it up? Can we share this video? And if you want to support me and you're new to this channel, you can do the same thing here. Thumbs it up, share it, join the Burmis Brigade, subscribe now. All of my films, my documentary films, they're free right here in the playlist section. Loose Change, Final Cut, Fabled Enemies, Invisible Empire, A New World Order Defined, and Shade the Motion Picture. And like I said, I'm doing it for free. So if you want to support me, $5, $10, $15 over on the monthly GoFundMe, it's how I do it. It's how I'm going to expand. Hopefully by Burmis Brigade Media Month 12, we'll have an office, we'll have interns, and we'll be pumping out the jams. You are part of history, friends. 24 videos in 24 hours. It's happening today before the terms of service may crush us all. I love you, and I will see you on the flip side.